Well, hello everyone. Welcome. I think we might have a couple people joining us still, but we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. Wanted to welcome you to the fourth of our sort of pilot series of our What's Next America workshops. So we'll be talking about capturing impacts of What's Next initiatives today. And we've in the past workshops in this series, we've talked about organizing and convening What's Next initiatives, facilitating the conversations, and then moving to action. And so we'll be starting a second sort of series of these workshops at the end of July or early August. We're still working on finalizing the dates for those and sort of also incorporating things that we've learned in this first go around and feedback and anything. So please feel free to offer any feedback you might have, and we're actively working to make any helpful changes for next time. So I wanted to, before we get started too much, I'll introduce myself just briefly. Dawn Harfman, NIFI's program manager. We'll get to more introductions in just a moment. But I did want to invite you all also to our community of practice. Our first convening of that will be tomorrow at noon Eastern, and so that the link for that you can find on the What's Next America website, and also on the website are recordings of the past workshops as well. I wanted to mention that too. And so, yeah, so our community of practice will be an opportunity of, an informal space to come together as different practitioners and people in communities doing this kind of What's Next America work. Any sort of deliberation, specifically deliberation moving towards action, will be a space to bring any challenges that you're facing and get sort of input and troubleshooting in a collaborative space. And also each month, they'll be monthly, these communities of practice, and each month we'll be focusing on a different topic. So the first one it's just going to be an opportunity to kind of collectively craft what we do going forward, but each month after that will be focused on a particular topic. Let's see here. Any other logistical things? Let's see. I did want to acknowledge also, as we do introductions, you'll meet, if you haven't had the pleasure already, Mandy Bailey, who has been a wonderful consultant for us as we've been thinking about capturing impacts. Mandy has a consulting firm, Coalescing LLC, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that she is here with us today, and we'll be sharing later in the workshop about one of the ways to capture impact, ripple effects mapping, and so you'll be hearing from her as well. Okay, let's move forward here. Before we go through and look at the agenda for today, I wanted to share the introductory questions that we'll be kind of asking you to respond to here. And so this is a little bit silly maybe, but I think it's, evaluating impacts can maybe have different, connotations or promote different reactions in people. So I just wanted to we can use that as a little bit of a silly way to get started here. But so if you could respond to that and also, share your name and maybe where you're at today geographically. So you can think on that for a moment. And so today, what we're going to do is we are trying to wrap up around at an hour, but with the option to stay on afterwards if anyone would like to, ask questions, discuss anything like that. So we'll start with a very quick introduction to NIFI, deliberation, and the What's Next America initiative. And then we'll talk about sort of our impact capturing approach and, welcome feedback on that as well and input, because we are, still in the process of crafting this. And so we want to make it as useful as possible. And we'll share some tools that we've already developed to support that, to support capturing impact. And then we'll have some closing reflections. Okay, so introductory questions. When you hear the words evaluating impact, what is the first thing that comes to your mind and why? Okay. And anyone can sort of come off mute and start. Maybe Kristen, Betty, would you want to maybe begin?
Sure. I'm Kristen Braun. I'm the executive director here at the National Issues Forums Institute. And I would say my new attitude towards evaluating impact is A, data, woohoo. But I will say that I've come a long way because it used to be more in the C area where I was um, nervous and felt a little bit intimidated by uh, gathering data and sharing and capturing impact. So I'm so glad y'all are here today. I'm joining from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm glad to see.
Let's see. Hi, everybody. I'm Betty Knighton. I'm joining you from Charleston, West Virginia, and I'm loving the opportunity that I have to work with the National Issues Forums Institute as an associate and to be a part of these workshops, specifically about elements that go into making What's Next America an initiative that can be used throughout the country. I will tell you, I've been doing this work for a long time, and over many years, I have developed a very loving relationship with capturing impact. I just love it because it makes such a difference to people to hear back what happened, what they can do, how things changed, what a difference was made, who was helped, and being able to capture that in a variety of forms. You might lump them all as data, but stories and ideas and reports that are shared and relationships that are built. All those things are types of impact that make the community stronger. So I definitely could say I'm a woohoo person on impact.
Thank you. Let's see. Uh, Patty, can I call on you?
Yes, sure. Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was the only Patty here.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't want to jump the gun. Um, yeah, I actually love data and what can be done with it. And I have a somewhat of a science background in biology and some science writing. So I just love what can come out of data and um, how it opens up a conversation to make sure that it's correct. Because, you get data and anybody can challenge it and say, where'd you get it? How'd you get it? Are you sure it's correct? So once you have evidence, you've got a lot going for what you're trying to do.
Let's see. Mandy, would you like to go?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon, everyone. And Dawn, thank you for the introduction. My name is Mandy. I'm coming from, well, I'm in South Carolina right now on my way to Maine with my family. So thank you for having me en route. But I do live and work in Florida. I would say the woohoo is definitely where I'm at, and I have had the absolute pleasure of working on some of these more collaborative evaluation experiences with NIFI. And I would say, though, having come from a more of a natural science background in my early years, I was kind of more in the yawn camp because it was very kind of quantitative, and I kind of didn't feel the soul of it. But as I've grown professionally and personally, I feel like that qualitative storytelling aspect of it has really opened my mind and changed my approach to it. So hopefully everyone will leave here kind of excited about data again, or in the first place.
Great. Let's see. Alex, would you like to go?
Oh, okay. Hello, I'm in
And
Madison,
how,
Wisconsin. And as far as data goes, I I'm interested in how it's collected and just making sure that it matches up with what we're trying to accomplish with it. So how I feel about the actual data depends on how well I understand that methodology.
let's see. Brandon, I think I might know your answer, but
Hello, it's good to see everyone. My name is Brandon Cleaver. I'm an associate professor of civic and organizational leadership and leadership studies here at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm pretty comfortable with both qualitative and quantitative data. Part of my role here at the University of Tennessee is I direct a dynamic leadership assessment tool that we use to measure adaptive leadership behavior, self-efficacy, and self-awareness. And we've designed the tool so that students and participants of our programs can receive instantaneous results. So they receive an email report, and then instructors are able to receive a group level report. And we work with our faculty and programmers to basically use that data to make evidence-based interventions in their leadership learning development programming. So I'm fluid with data and look forward to kind of applying it in innovative ways.
So much. Let's see. Clark, can I ask you to go next?
Sure, I put the response in the chat.
Oh,
but,
so sorry.
That's all right. I put answer B. I'm Clark Friesen at Lone Star College Tomball, northwest of Houston. And yeah, answer B.
Okay, cool. Love it. Oops, went back. There we go. Let's see, Shauna. How about you? And it's okay if you can't. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, I was trying to figure out how to turn my camera on at the same time,
No
but
worries.
nonetheless, so Shauna Riley, Northern Kentucky University, and I said other. I really dislike when people use impact, like it's impactful, and okay, so what does that mean? Like I want to know like the sort of pieces behind that, and I think sometimes we get a little carried away and say, oh, there's this impact, and so I want to know when we talk about assessment, like what are we actually measuring, and how are we backing up the impact discussion?
Great. Let's see, and I haven't seen the chat, so if anyone else like already put their answer in and just wants to pass, that's cool. But otherwise, Tom, how about you?
Hi. Yeah, I just put a note in the
Oh,
chat
sure.
that I can't get my camera working, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'd rather pay attention. Yeah. I've never had a problem with the camera before. So anyway, yeah, I'm retired from Indiana University from cognitive science and education, and so I was a researcher using qualitative methods as well as quantitative, and I would love to see the strategies involved in talking about this work in data collection.
All right, and let's see here. I think Melissa.
Hello, sorry, I kind of just came in from another meeting.
Yeah.
I assume you're just asking me to answer the question at hand here.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I am definitely letter C. I am fearful of evaluating impact, but that's part of the reason that I joined here today. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and Devin, I saw you put in answer B in the chat. Just check that here. So yeah, thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing. It's really helpful to kind of get to connect here and also just know that we have a variety of perspectives on this topic going in. So appreciate that. And let's continue on here. So there we go. So this is our very quick overview of NIFI, and many of you are familiar with this and have heard this like multiple times in our workshop. So I just want to make it very quick for those who haven't. So at National Issues Forums Institute, we believe that solving public problems requires public participation. So NIFI has been around for over 40 years and believes that democracy is strengthened when people can not only talk but work together to work together on issues that affect their lives. So we support this effort by equipping, empowering, and mobilizing people to use deliberation to take action for the public good. Okay, deliberation, many of you are already familiar, but democratic practice for addressing complex issues and solving public problems. So involves people talking together to consider diverse perspectives and the trade-offs of each one, recognizing that, you know, the view they came in with maybe to the conversation, that it's more complex than they might have thought. And then through that deliberation, identifying common ground for action. And so that's an important part of what, you know, we and NIFI are trying to support is that action piece. So talk, decide, act is kind of how we, the process that we kind of are thinking about. Okay, so some research has indicated, this is research by More in Common, that Americans do want to engage across difference, but want to do so in a way that is actually working together on issues in their communities, not just sort of stopping at talking about the differences that we might have. So What's Next America is a way to support communities in talking together, identifying ways to improve their communities, either through identifying a challenge that they collectively would like to work on, or an opportunity to build on. And then moving towards taking action, supporting the process of communities moving from that conversation to action to actually make those changes. Okay, so in our program here, we provide resources and learning opportunities. So these are different guides and so participant guides. We have 3 different versions that are tailored to sort of general communities, K-12 and youth environments, and higher ed, college campus type environments. A planning guide to support organizers of these initiatives, different toolkits. These are actually, more of these we're sort of developing all the time. And then, so these learning opportunities, this is of course one of them, and we have the calendar of other opportunities that are upcoming on our website, and also companion resources that partners and allies are sort of developing that kind of dovetail well with what's next. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of this here today. So first, we wanted to talk about why do we even capture impacts? Why is that important, particularly in a What's Next America context? Some of these, might be obvious, but wanted to talk through some of them. So first of all, so that organizers and participants can see that what they're doing actually has a real outcome. It's a lot of, like energy and time sometimes that goes into these initiatives. And so it's important to be able to see that for people to be able to see that what they're doing matters. And then to also share this process and the outcomes, the wins with the broader community, so that maybe more people want to join if they see that something's actually getting done for once. It's not just a bunch of people talking and complaining together or something like that. That things that they've wanted to see get done, these people are actually doing. Well, hey, maybe that can be me too. So that's another thing. And then, some of these initiatives that communities are going to want to be doing are going to require resources, and either money sort of itself or in-kind donations and different things like that. And so, and also, support from partners, other kinds of support. And so to be able to demonstrate that in a way that's convincing and compelling to help justify why other people and organizations might want to support it. And then, to be able to actually show, to actually move action forward. So to be able to, show that people are actually, kind of convening on a certain, agreeing on sort of some common ground, and then for that to be able to make it easier for the actions to actually happen. And we'll hear a little bit more about that later on. And then lastly, on a broader, sort of more broadly, thinking about how this type of initiative is a great example when these things work, a great example of how Americans are strengthening democracy, building civic capacity in their communities, and doing the work of democracy together. And lastly, this isn't on here, but I also wanted to add that, the process of capturing impact, and I think Mandy will probably touch on some of this as well, but the actual process can be really fun, can be really rewarding for the people actually participating in it. So I think that's another thing that might be valuable as well. And so I did want to take a moment to ask if there's anything else that you think sort of what motivates you to capture impacts, to do different types of evaluations. And we talked about some people mentioned these in the introductions. But if there's anything else you wanted to share, please feel free. I'll just pause a moment here. There can be a lot of things that might motivate this kind of work. Okay. Well, great. Feel free to, add anything to the chat if you like, but we'll kind of continue on here. Okay. So, again, why capture impacts? Well, the motivation might also depend on kind of who you are, where you are in this process, right? So participants might have certain motivations to, be part of a process of capturing impact. Organizers of these initiatives might have other motivations and other reasons why that is rewarding. And then, NIFI as an organization has other, reasons why it's important to capture impacts as well. So the process, the sort of approach that we're taking to scaffold and sort of structure the supports that we're developing for supporting, organizers and communities in doing that capturing of impact. We're creating it sort of in this tiered way, right, to address different groups that might be interested in doing this. Okay, so I wanted to ask, kind of hand it over to Kristen to share a little bit of, the broader sort of NIFI's goals in this sort of impact capturing, story gathering type of work. So.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Well, we're very excited about this aspect of the What's Next America initiative because it's a new area for us. Traditionally, we have not dedicated a ton of energy, time, and resources to broadly evaluating many of our initiatives and then also engaging in storytelling. And so we really want to uplift and highlight and amplify stories across the country of Americans doing good work together and finding ways to, yes, talk better together about the issues that they care about, but also how they're making decisions and moving to action around the things that they care about in their communities. So we're really excited about that story telling as well, because we think that the evaluation can not only help us see what's working and what's not working, but also counteract the narrative that people can't work together and nothing positive gets done in our country. We see so much dysfunction at the federal and often even state capitol level that we would like to be able to highlight and uplift stories of how things are working well in communities when they are working well. So, Dawn, if you'll go to the next slide. There's many themes and questions that we could capture, and we'd love to hear from you today about some of the things you'd like to see us consider capturing and sharing as we move forward with What's Next America. But some of the things that we're initially very interested in, and I want to thank the entire staff team as well as Mandy, who's on the call, and I've also am grateful for Brandon taking time to have conversations with me. A lot of the conversations that we're having with people in our network are shaping what types of impact we want to be able to communicate. And so we'd love to hear from you about what you're thinking and what you would find valuable. We really want to hear how people are connecting. Do people feel more connected to their community and to one another after participating in deliberation or What's Next initiative? Do they also have a greater sense that their voice matters, but also a greater sense of agency or civic efficacy, that they can not only share their perspective, but that they can also do something to make an impact around the issues that they care about in their community or in our country? And then we want to look at that action piece. That's something that's very new for us, and thinking through, does deliberation actually help people move toward action? We want to figure out if it does or not. And if so, what are the environments and the supports that help make that possible? We also want to know what people do together when they come together to deliberate and then move to action. And we also want to better understand, how do people work across differences even when they still disagree with one another? Those are the four main categories that we're looking at for measuring impact for What's Next America. But like we said, we're excited to learn more about what you all and so many other folks in our network are interested in measuring. With that, Dawn, I'll turn it back because we want to hear more about how we got to this point of these four categories.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I think I'm going to ask Betty to share a little bit about that and kind of talk about the different types of change that might be useful specifically in What's Next America initiatives to be focusing on specifically.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think it's important when we're considering how we're going to assess or evaluate impact to think about the broad range of changes that might be happening in a community that you'd want to look at. in order to see what impact these various types of behaviors or activities or changes might make. Now, if you are an organizer of a community initiative or a campus-based initiative, bringing people together to talk about and identify issues that they want to work on, and then they work on them together and even move to acting on them together, you might be particularly interested in seeing how did that affect the institutions that were involved? What kind of change did it make in their institutional behavior and their institutional goals or programs, and then what impact those changes might have had. So you're looking at programmatic changes in organizations. You're also really looking at, did new organizations or people start working together in kind of an ongoing way that made a difference in the community. And so you'd be looking at the potential impact of that kind of change, and also any particular actions. I think people would focus particularly on whether what came out of these deliberative discussions and action planning sessions, how did those actions actually impact life in that place? So those are probably the ones that organizers might be interested in looking at, but there's this broader assortment of them as well that we have on this next slide. And what I'll do with each of these, I'll just give you a quick example from my life here in West Virginia, although there's many examples for each of these and that many people could add other ones. But when you're thinking about change that you want to look at impact in your community to see what difference it made. I always think about individual behavior or individual attitudes, because if you are in these discussions a lot, often you're very aware of and touched by the expressions that people make of how their attitudes and behaviors have changed. Sometimes it would be an internal process. Other times somebody will say something, well, nobody ever listened to me this way before, or I've never really been able to think of that perspective before because everybody in my family thinks this other way. So people sometimes just verbalize the behavior and attitudinal changes they have. One in particular that I'm remembering was this group of people in Wood County, West Virginia, and they were really trying to understand why the amount of homelessness in their community had increased dramatically and what they could do to be helpful and to improve the lives of people that were struggling. And they, in the first discussion, they had lots of questions about, well, why is this increasing suddenly? What's happened? What's different? And they realized that nobody in the room, even though they had had some basic information, nobody in the room really knew the data on that. They didn't know any, they didn't feel like they had the people in the room that could really answer the questions about why this was happening. And so one young guy stood up and he said, well, I guess I'm going to have to become a citizen researcher. He said, anybody want to be on my team? And he said he'd never done that before. And the other people that volunteered to help him had never done that before. But 3 or 4 of them said, okay, when we come back together in 2 weeks, we're going to have talked to the director of the homeless shelter. We're going to have talked to the police department. We're going to talk to the sheriff's office. We're going to talk to, and we'll come back and tell you what we learned. And that's what they did. So for them, that was a pretty big commitment and a important contribution, but it was also a behavior change for them. As far as new relationships and networks, one county here in my state was really struggling with, as most places are, opiate abuse. And many of the people that were were incarcerated in this day report center where there's basically daytime incarceration and education that goes on. Almost all of them were there as nonviolent felons that had been involved in criminal activity that was related to their addictions. And when we had a countywide, what we called Action Summit, they were brought there by their counselor. They got permission to leave the premises to come to this Action Summit. And so there was also a county commissioner there, and there was also a judge there from the county courthouse. They happened to be sitting together. And based on the quality, what they told us later was such a interesting and respectful way that they were able to learn from each other's experiences and points of view, they decided to continue to meet with the nonviolent felons at the Day Report Center and the judicial system on a regular basis so that they could understand what each needed to do better and what could be done to make things change. Collaborations, so many, but I can think one in particular where a local community was talking about healthy children. How do people get a good start? How do children get a good start in life? And they were hearing from a lot of young moms, especially low-income young moms without a lot of access to fresh local produce, that they just didn't know how to cook for their children. And so a local church started partnering with the organization that was working with these young moms to do cooking classes, and showing them how they could get healthy foods for their children and how they could prepare them in simple, basic ways when they were so busy with other things in life. Institutional changes, we have some pharmacy schools here in West Virginia. One in particular, after being a part of one discussion related to addiction and substance abuse in the state, they decided that it would be really important for the pharmacy students that they were educating to hear what the community was saying about opiate abuse in particular. And so they made it a part of their curriculum that every student going through that pharmacy school would attend, and some even facilitated a community discussion on that issue. Public policy, I just love this one. One of our counties was talking about how to help students stay in school. They were experiencing a higher dropout rate than they thought was understandable, and they wanted to help every child who could stay in school. In West Virginia, out of our 54 of our 55 counties have a compulsory rate of 17. You have to stay in school until you're 17. This county, because of discussions that they had, they petitioned the state legislature and they got what's called a special legislative exception to raise the age to 18. And so one county in West Virginia has that exception, and they can require students to stay in school so that they can get more help and assistance in order to have the education that they need to thrive. As far as community dynamics and public life, seen so many things in that range. People will begin arts fairs to support the arts community, but also ends up bringing in jobs and appreciation from other people. They'll work on things that are good for young adults in the state because we have a kind of a population drain in that area. So there's a lot of things that really change. I would say in terms of the dynamics, it's more about people continuing to talk together over time. And public life is all these things that their work has brought to the community in terms of job opportunities in some places, and cultural events in others.
Thanks, Betty. And sorry, I didn't mean to actually click that. It prematurely clicked.
Actually, it was the perfect timing. Back to you. Back to Dawn.
Perfect. Well, we just wanted to pause because it's kind of been a lot of information, and that's really helpful. And so just to see if anyone has any questions that they wanted to ask of Betty or any of us, or if you had any thoughts on what of these types of impacts and types of impacts do you think that would be most useful if you're thinking about potentially doing a What's Next initiative in your community or your context. What types of impact would be most compelling to you to capture, or also what challenges come to mind when you think about any of these types of impacts to capture. So I'll pause for just a moment and see if anybody wanted to share anything at the moment, and otherwise we'll carry on. But if you do, you can just come off mute because I can't see hands raised. So. Okay. Well, we'll continue on, but please feel free to add things to the chat as you would like to. Okay. So I think back to Betty for a few minutes here.
Yes, we just wanted to mention these broad categories that people tend to look at. One is most people want to look specifically at the actions that occurred and then the impact of those actions. And of course, that's incredibly important. We wanted just to say that in our experience, looking at the relationships that are formed in order to fuel those actions or to support those actions is equally important. And one last thing that I think all of us who have been involved in this kind of work would say is you have to kind of stay adaptive and kind of adjust to the moment. You have to adjust to opportunities that you might not have expected that are having an impact in your community, and maybe change your strategy here or there, or direct it in places that you might not have expected in order to capture the impact that the work is having. And so for this, I just wanted to show those of you some of you I know have been with us on earlier in earlier workshops, and you've seen us talk about this before, but today we're putting it particularly in the context of capturing impact. We've talked about What's Next America as a national initiative that's localized. So around the country, people who have these discussions that lead into action planning and actions are actually localizing the issues that they want to talk about to the people in their own community. And so that we expect a wide range of issues that are surfacing and a wide range of actions that come out of that. The work begins with a diverse planning team, a team of partners that can reach out to those in the community who have different points of view, different life experiences, with an emphasis on people who are typically not part of discussions, to make sure that those experiences and voices are brought into the discussion. Even when you're in the diverse planning team stage, there's opportunities to capture impact. At that time, some partners may have challenges to working together, or reasons why they can or can't do a particular thing. Not to be assessing their willingness, but to be understanding why people have challenges and what kind of impact this kind of work might have on the challenges that they're facing and the opportunities that they have as a team. Tons of outreach through this team, and that's another opportunity for you to capture how people respond to being invited, how people respond to the message of, we hope you'll come and talk about these things and work about these things together if you're willing. There's a series of discussions. We have 3 bubble boxes there. It could be more than 3, but we are expecting people to have at least 3 discussions that time is necessary to really formulate ideas about action. So we talk about, where are we now in one discussion? Where do we want to go in the next? And how will we get there in the third? And as I said, that's also very flexible and adaptive. That's where so much of the what you want to capture is going to surface, because you have their participants talking with each other. That's where all the different kinds of behavior and attitudinal and informational changes might happen. And then the whole wide range of actions that can occur after people set directions for what they want to do in their community, and the opportunity to be able to not only capture the impact of how the action, how the discussions help people move to action, but what the impact of the actions themselves were.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. So just to kind of emphasize, and Betty laid this out beautifully, but just, in just to summarize, I guess, that the fact that, the questions, the types of questions and the types of impacts that you can capture at each phase of this process are going to be different. And so I think that's another reason why it's important to start early, is because some of the impacts happen at the beginning. And so it changes throughout. And so just wanted to kind of, emphasize that. I think that's probably all we need to add there. But these are some of the types, sort of different ways, opportunities throughout that process that we're thinking about as, kind of ways to get into that impacts to sort of get at those. And so we've been starting to develop pre and post surveys for participants, reflections also, following each discussion, even during the planning and organizing phase, reflections on that process, like Betty was mentioning, among the planning team, can be really fruitful. And then interviews with participants. Again, it's not just surveys. There's different ways that we can, and that really provide that sort of more well-rounded and robust type of sort of library of data to loosely speaking, to paint a good picture of what's going on. And then surveys and interviews of the organizers as well as more sort of informal observations and reflections from organizers on the experiences and the actions and the conversations themselves. Okay, so a little bit more concretely here, we wanted to, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen in a moment and show you, we have a draft of a survey that we wanted to just share with you. This is not finalized, but it's a draft that we wanted to ask you for any feedback on and everything, of a participant survey. We're developing a question bank because what we'd really like to see is this sort of draft survey, and once we finalize it, to have it be shareable with anyone who's thinking about, doing a What's Next initiative, and have it be adaptable, right? So that there's sort of a base of, I don't know, I think it's five questions or so, but then organizers can add questions from the question bank or other ones that they might think of, and be able to add ones that they think are most, that they're most interested in learning about, impacts in their particular community, or different things that might be able to make the survey most relevant and useful to organizers and participants in that local initiative, right? So, so we're developing a question bank for that. Shortly, we'll be developing sample reflection questions to support that more like informal and qualitative process of just reflecting after discussions. That can just be a really rewarding and useful thing for organizers and participants. The story gathering process, we are fortunate to have on our team, Christine Fernando, who is going to be helping us. She is a former journalist. If you haven't met her, she's wonderful. And she will be helping us to, gather, like helping communities and NIFI ourselves to be gathering stories and creating resources to help with conducting interviews and that sort of thing. So we have an expert on the team on that. So that's wonderful. And then we'll also be developing surveys for organizers and different reporting forms that we can share out as well. Of course, we have our ongoing training and coaching and all of that. So there'll be further workshops that we'll be offering that are go into more detail on these different tools themselves and how they might be able to be applied. And then also we wanted to move into talking about ripple effects mapping. So in a moment, after I share the survey, we wanted to ask Mandy to share a little bit about ripple effects mapping and sort of where that might fit into a What's Next process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and see if I can share with you the survey that we have. So that'll take me just a moment. Any questions in the meantime are totally welcome, or comments. Just give me a moment here. Okay. Actually, I think I'm having oh, there it is. Okay. We will share that here. Okay. So, and maybe we can put the link to this in the chat as well, in case that's easier. I think I can do that here. So, okay. All right. So I wanted to walk us through this and really just ask for any feedback that you all might have. Like I said, we're developing this now. And so if there are things that you think would be additionally useful to have, again, this is a form, a survey that will be given to organizers or provided to organizers to give to participants, for participants to provide feedback and input on the process. So these are the types of questions that we're looking at. I feel like I'm part of this community. Okay, I believe people in this community can work together even when we see things differently. I feel like my voice matters in this community. I believe I can help make a difference in this community. And then in the past 6 months, which of these best describes you, and sort of different ways that someone might get involved in a community issue. And then a post survey, very similar. Again, the link should be in the chat there so you can scroll through on your own. But very similar questions, and then with instead of this number 5 here being, it's just changing number 5 out for a slightly different one to reflect that it's after the process has taken place. So are there any thoughts, questions, things that you might, I'm going to actually stop sharing here. thoughts or questions on this survey and anything that you might like to see added or considered? Anything like that? If not, that's totally fine. And we'll move on to hearing from Mandy, but just wanted to open the floor for a moment. So I'll just pause for a couple seconds here. Okay. Well, feel free to put anything in the chat. But
I had one thing. I just really appreciate the resource that you're providing facilitators to have those assessment questions. I think that will be really useful. One of the things that I was thinking about as well is, have you considered different ways in which participants would be able to see those results as like a feedback loop at some point?
I don't think we've given any extensive thought to that, and I think that's a great thing to consider. And I think also we would probably love to hear any, any ideas that you have on how to make that happen well. So now or later, but yeah, I think, Kristen, do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the survey that Brandon mentioned earlier, the G Lead, one of the things we love about that and are excited to explore, opportunities to work with you on that, is because it provides a wonderful report after folks participate in it. And so trying to figure out how do we do that in a way that uses a simple platform for participants, we are very interested in that and just need to figure out the logistics.
Yeah, that was really my question, because I'm curious, like, this is a group of creative people, and so I was thinking of like, how do we scale something that could be publicly available to people who are utilizing the guide, so that they can incorporate it as part of their process. And I don't know if I have an explicit answer. I was just curious if there had been any thought given to that.
So just to, I guess, a question about the question. So like thinking about how community members in a particular What's Next initiative could view their sort of like their feedback and their responses, or more like how communities across the country could view the national input, national feedback.
Yeah, I think it could be both, and I don't mean to overstep or anything, but like what we do with the G Lead is, so I actually wasn't involved on the back end of it, but we have a team here at Tennessee that's connected Qualtrics with Tableau. So it's basically a software platform that when a participant completes the assessment using Qualtrics, there's some coding in the background with Tableau that generates a report and automatically sends it to the participant's email. So then they have an individual report, but at the end of the assessment phase, the main facilitator gets like an aggregate report of the group. So I would be happy to share that tool with anyone that's interested, and then and have them get a sense of what it's like. But maybe we could think about strategically together of how we could scale even something like that for facilitators across the country.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. Patty, yeah.
Thanks for that. That's really interesting, and interesting sounding software and platforms. I really like the question. I wonder, in the past, like a local newspaper or media outlet can make a fantastic partner for somebody who's doing a community discussion series of any kind. And I think Christine Fernando, as our very own journalist, might be able to help us think about that too. But I'm thinking that if a media outlet could follow along and share what's going on, I bet you there'd be a lot of people in the community who might be reluctant to actually come to a meeting and sit down and have a discussion, but might be happy to sort of vicariously follow along and maybe someday get involved in some way. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the net can definitely be wider, and the impacts, like, I think, if part of what we're trying to do is, show that people are working together and in building civic capacity and all of that, that public imagination of what's possible is really important. So that's great. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I think that for those of you who have been along for many or most of these workshops, you've heard from Betty talking about partnerships with the West Virginia Public Broadcasting. And so involving media partners from the beginning as kind of stakeholders in the planning and not just the folks that you call when it's all over can be really helpful and important. Patty, building on what you said, to make sure that they understand the full kind of spectrum of what you're trying to accomplish with the initiative and not just capturing some quotes at one public discussion, you know?
Well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been really helpful, and hopefully helpful for you as well. But I wanted to turn it over to Mandy, if that's okay, Mandy, to share with us about ripple effects mapping. This is something I have not been able to yet personally experience, but some of the others in the room here have, and I know they've found it very rewarding and useful. So love to, Mandy, hear your thoughts and.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I am definitely a ripple effects mapping fan, so I get very excited about it. I actually just before kind of jumping into ripple effects mapping, though, I just appreciate this conversation in the room so much. And Brandon, I'm very curious myself about the Qualtrics Pablo kind of interaction as well. I would love to learn more about that myself. And I think also you just really kind of hit on that idea too of in evaluation and understanding impacts, what those may be, making them concrete is really understanding in the evaluation process, right? Where are we at? Are we in those early stages, that kind of developmental, or we already have some momentum behind us, and are we really have kind of formed those basics already? Or are we at that tail end? And I think Kristen and you just said about media, getting them involved. A lot of times it's at the tail end looking back, and there's not a ton of space to evaluate where we are or where we want to move forward. And those can be critical junctures that we have in the evaluation process and the potential for growth and improvement along that way, even in our improvement of what data and information we're gathering towards our ultimate goals. There's a good place to remind ourselves that those reflective times and where we're at in that process are just as important as kind of wrapping it up and providing that final report. So from there, I kind of, that brings me right into ripple effects mapping, and it really is a qualitative focused tool that is very applicable in situations where there is some sort of relationship that has been formed among the participants. Ripple effects mapping is typically not something that's done in the very early stages. Although I'm going to put a little caveat on there and come back to that in just a few minutes for certain exceptions to the rule. So just a very quick background, ripple effects mapping was started in the university extension world, particularly with Mary Emery at the University of Washington and Scott Chasden, University of Minnesota. And there are a handful of others, and I'm actually going to put in the chat right now the link to the REM field guide that was created by those extensionists. It is just a wonderful foundation for getting a deeper understanding of what ripple effects mapping is and what it can provide. And a great place to get started there. So the process of ripple effects mapping is based on, there's 4 kind of ingredients. Oh, so long, Brandon. Nice to meet you here. And the core ingredients are appreciative inquiry, which is a very much asset-focused approach. So we're looking at where are we at and what is going right. The second core ingredient is participation. So it really is about engaging everyone in the room, facilitator, invitees, everyone. The third ingredient is group interviewing and reflection. And the final is mind mapping, or really grabbing what is being shared in the room and putting it into either an online software or just having a big piece of paper up on the board and it's being handwritten. So those notes are being captured for everyone to see during the process. And they are they're like living documents. So we put that out there and you can make those changes that may be caught correctly or incorrectly as we go. And as the name implies, the ripple effects are we start with our core question and kind of what we're looking to better understand. And with the involvement of everyone in the room, we start to create those nodes. So we'll have, one particular idea, and then from that, as we go around and share, those nodes start to kind of branch out and then further and further along. And it can become quite a large visual as well. So with the, I did mention in one of the core ingredients is this group interviewing idea. And actually maybe what I'll just go through very quickly is the process of the ripple effects mapping. And so when we enter this room, and it can be held online as well, although I feel that those of us who have been involved in kind of community engagement, having people in person, there is definitely a nuance and that much more that can be shared. And so it's just kind of you start by just an overview, give people an idea of why we're all in the room together and the objectives that we're going to have going forward. So just a few minutes on that. And then secondly, we ask people to divide into very small groups, maybe 2 or 3 people. And we typically ask a question of, for example, what part of your engagement with this project or organization, whatever it is you're looking to evaluate, has given you a sense of pride or has given you a sense of success. And in those small groups, each people are sharing what their experience is related to that question and with that group. And from there, that's maybe just a 10-15 minute exercise. And as we all come back together into a main group, that's kind of where the magic starts to happen, because then we ask again that same question, what has created that sense of pride or success and the involvement with the group that you're with. And from there, the thing is we find that people that may be more hesitant to speak, it may be someone that interviewed them that winds up sharing their story with their permission. They can say, maybe my story feels small, but what, so-and-so shared with me really gave me a sense of what this community is really about. So from there, during that time when that's shared out, those ripples are being caught again online or with just hand-drawn notes on the board. And that mapping process and that sharing out process, and with the facilitator drawing out, well, this is what happened during this time. And then we start to kind of, another person may interject and say, yes, and from that experience, this happened in my work. And then we start to look backwards to, well, what brought you to that place? Or what other impacts did you see happen from that interaction you had? So there's kind of this sense of a movement of what has happened all around, but even looking back, what brought you to this place? And in the final phases of the REM process is more of a reflection, looking around, looking at the map that may be on the wall or online, and seeing what connections happened during that, 45 minutes to hour, a little over an hour of mind mapping and sharing out with the group. And reflecting back on just what we were talking about a few minutes ago, this idea that, Brandon had asked about that feedback loop. One of the things that we've found with my colleagues that I've done ripple effects mapping with is the importance of coming back after the process has been completed and sharing back that information to everyone that was involved or in the room. And asking, are things accurately recorded? Did we catch everything? And if not, if there's an opportunity to add on post session, if there's an opportunity to maybe have interviews with those that may have not been in the room, just to build on that information that was shared. One of the things about ripple effects mapping, I think that is important too, is to recognize that though we may spend time really gathering everyone that we are aware that was involved with that organization or that group, it is just a snapshot in time too. It really is just who was in that room at that moment bringing that information in, but it's a wonderful foundation to start and to move forward with. So, make sure I'm all right with time too, Don. Please feel free to, I get very excited about that. So, with REM, ripple effects mapping, and the data analysis that comes after. So you've grabbed all of these qualitative stories, right? The stories of the background and what led people to be involved, what kind of impacts. And again, I know that question had come up earlier too. How do we gauge what we consider impactful? The nice thing about this process is that it's not just one voice, it's many sharing what kind of impacts have happened and giving kind of the concrete evidence of those things. The variations in REM are, that it can be looked at, you can kind of look at the web map, the mind mapping that's happened, and look at the short, the medium, and the long-term impacts. There's also an opportunity, depending upon your approach to the REM session, is this more inductive or going into a session without these preconceived notions starts to surface some of those obvious impacts, but also a lot of underlying things can start to come out in the conversation. As time goes on, typically the room kind of relaxes and starts to maybe open up and share sometimes kind of intimate stories that are aligned with their journey in working with this group. And lastly, there is another variation that's a little bit more of a deductive approach, and that is starting to hear those stories and as a group collaboratively starting to theme or categorize what stories are emerging, and together seeing what those ripples are and how they fit into different categories. So there are many different approaches to ripple effects mapping. And I'm just going to take a pause there. I know I've kind of said a lot, and if you're not familiar with it, it can kind of seem overwhelming. So I just wanted to give a moment for any kind of questions or comments.
Yeah, we've asked Mandy to do like probably a nearly impossible task of, like trying to cram like all of this information about ripple effects mapping into like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or something. So thank you for bearing with us, Mandy. But yeah, any questions for Mandy? Or also, we're at the hour here, so or a few minutes after, sorry. But if there's any other questions for, or thoughts that anyone wanted to share about what Mandy shared or anything else from the session today, please feel free to do so. And then if not, we can, always wrap up as well. And so I'll just give a pause here. Oh, yeah, Alex, definitely.
Mandy mentioned that the ripple effect or measuring the ripple effect can look different at the middle and the end, and there's some exceptions where sometimes you do want to do it at the beginning. So I was wondering what those look like.
Yeah, we have generally the evaluation is for organizations or groups that have worked together, we would say at least 6 months to a year. The longer the better, because that more information that can come forward and the more interactions, the larger the breadth of the rippling and the depth of the rippling will be. But there is some use of it, especially with a lot of European colleagues, that looks at using it for more of a visioning experience in those formative or like very developmental early stages, because it has that very asset focused appreciative inquiry. It kind of raises questions of where do we want to go, and so there is a little bit of a visioning that it's been adapted to support. Yes. And Dawn, I was just going to mention real quick for everyone too. I did share a couple of PDFs that I think will be available to.
Yes.
Okay. And there's one that's 14 things to do with REM, and the other is the community capitals framework that those stories are analyzed and coded with.
Yes, I'm gonna put them in the chat right now. That first one is the 14 things, and then this is the community capital one. So I'll put them in the chat here, but I'm also going to make sure that we include those on our follow-up email with resources and everything. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. All right. Well, I think we are definitely available. You can email. I'll put my email here. If there are any questions about any of this for now, again, we do have our community of practice tomorrow, and we'll be rolling out a new slate of workshops in the coming hopefully week or two. Be getting those on the calendar. Mandy, is it all right if we put your email in the chat as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I don't actually have it at hand here, but okay, wonderful. And again, I wanted to, thank Mandy for her, guidance throughout our process of developing our impact evaluation kind of approach, and also, Brandon for his contributions. He had to step off the call here, but and all of you for being here today to talk with us and share. So thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Have a wonderful afternoon.